Good afternoon. This is John Horwich, President and CEO of Easterseals DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We are so glad to have you joining us today. We all have been confronted with racial inequality and the reality that despite the Civil Rights Act, racial discrimination still exists. A few weeks ago, we had a wonderful candid conversation called How to Talk to Our Children About Racism, providing advice to parents on raising a more inclusive generation. With inclusivity and civil rights top of mind for many, we're thrilled to host today's candid conversation on the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the civil rights it provides, and the work still to be done to create a community that fully includes individuals with disabilities. I hope you find this conversation meaningful and ask you to please submit your questions in the Q&A box. Thank you for showing your support for Easterseals by joining us. Thanks to our amazing panelists for their participation, and special thanks to our moderator, longtime Easterseals friend and advocate, Kristen Berset-Harris, host of WUSA 9's Great Day Washington. Kristen?
John, thank you so much, and thank you to everybody for being here and joining in so we can have this conversation today. We are just going to be open and just have a dialogue, and as John mentioned, if you have any questions, we will have time for some Q&A at the end, so please submit those when they come to you. We want to get this conversation started, but first I of course want to introduce our distinguished panelists, and I'm going to start with the other lady that is joining us today. We have Angela Williams, who is President and CEO of Easterseals. Easterseals is a leading nonprofit provider of life-changing services and advocacy for children and adults with disabilities, veterans, and older adults. Angela is the 10th person to lead Easterseals in its history. She is the first African-American and the first female within the past 43 years to hold this post. With 30 years of leadership experience in the nonprofit and corporate sectors, she was previously EVP, General Counsel, and Chief Administration Officer at YMCA of the USA, where she was instrumental in shaping strategy and developing resources to help 2,700 YMCAs across the country enhance outcomes for youth and families in 10,000 communities. Angela also began her professional career as an officer in the U.S. Air Force, serving in the Judge Advocate General Corps. Prior to joining YUSA, she was the interfaith liaison for the Bush-Clinton-Katrina Fund, a nonprofit organization formed to provide critically needed donations to assist the survivors of Hurricane Katrina. So Angela, coming to us from Chicago, we appreciate you being here with us today.
Thanks, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
All right, we also have Colonel Greg Gadson from the U.S., retired from Chesapeake, Virginia native, served our nation in the United States Army for more than 26 years, culminating as the garrison commander of Fort Belvoir. His life is a portrait of courage in the face of adversity. In May 2007, as commander of the 2nd Battalion, 32nd Field Artillery, Colonel Gadson's greatest challenge came in Iraq, where an improvised explosive device, an IED attack, cost him both legs above the knees and normal use of his right arm and hand. Now, despite this, Colonel Gadson has remained on active duty in the Army, continued to inspire many with his message of courage and perseverance and determination and teamwork, inspiring people all over the nation and all over the world. Colonel Gadson is a passionate advocate for wounded warriors, veterans, and those with disabilities, and on several occasions has testified before Congress on issues related to these groups. Retired from the Army, American actor, motivational speaker, Colonel Gadson, we're so good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we also have Larry Bram. Larry, welcome. Larry is Vice President of Innovation at Easterseals, DC MDVA, and a Maryland lobbyist. Has more than 40 years of experience working in both the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors for mission-based organizations. In his current role, he is responsible for developing sustainable new programs and social enterprise businesses that meet vital community needs, but do not require constant fundraising to survive. In addition to his role at Easterseals, Larry is widely involved in the local disability community and serves on the Maryland Commission of Caregiving, which is appointed by the governor, the Montgomery County Commission on People with Disabilities, which is appointed by the county executive, and co-chairs its Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee. Of course, all of this passion for this work is fueled by his 26-year-old daughter with a disability. Larry has a degree in British literature from the University of Michigan and an MBA from the Stanford University Graduate School of Business with a certificate in public management. Larry, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
So suffice to say, we have a great panel here for you. Now, before we get started, I want everybody to know that there is a poll for you, probably just popped up on your screen. So go ahead, answer a couple of those questions, see how it's going. And while we get started, Angela, I'm gonna come to you. As we are talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act, the 30th anniversary of its signing, remind us all what the ADA stands for, what it was fought for, and what it's done for us over these last 30 years.
Thanks, Kristen. That's a great question. It's absolutely amazing to think that we're just 38 years into fairness and equity for people with disabilities. 30 years ago, President George H.W. Bush signed into a law that provided for equal access, public accommodations for people with disabilities, and even touched on education. At that time, people living with disabilities did not always have access to buildings simply because there were barriers, whether it was a ramp to get into a building or whether it was lighting or the inability to open heavy doors. I mean, just things that we would think are normal everyday access points. Those were not in place either in small businesses, large businesses, federal government buildings even. So that's part of what, when we talk about public accommodation that the ADA did. Secondly, it precluded discrimination against people with disabilities in the workplace, and they have rights now. So there should be no discrimination. And if someone is injured or if we want to hire someone with a disability, then employers are required to make reasonable accommodations. So again, just fair equity opportunities. That's what the ADA gave people with disabilities. But I will say there's much more to do.
Let me get off my muted. Can you hear me? I was going to say, you know, as we are seeing in the times that we're in, there's always room for improvement and always room for change, especially as technology evolves and just our world in general evolves. So we're going to talk about some of those things that you all think we need to look forward to as we move forward and as the ADA tends to evolve. Larry, I want to go to you as a father with a child who now an adult daughter with a disability. What kind of effects have you seen from the ADA and the things that it has allowed for you and your daughter and your family?
Okay, I should first say that I am a poor substitute for my daughter herself. I wish she were able to be here to speak for herself instead of me speaking on her behalf. But we talk a lot about this. She was born 4 years after the ADA. I'm sure I had never thought of it until it entered my life. When she was born, we were told when she was 5 days old that she was missing part of her brain and would probably never develop language or walk or do anything. Today, in large part thanks to the ADA, she lives independently, she has a college degree, she's applying to go to grad school to be a speech therapist. So the ADA gave her that access. So it opened the doors, she rolled through a lot of those doors. So, it's, I can't imagine what her life would have been. If she were my age, she would have ended up in an institution and probably never would have developed language or done anything or gone to school. So it's had profound impacts, that we expected because that's just who she was and how she rolled.
And that was even so soon after she was born. What challenge, you talk about things that's helped, but what are you seeing as a parent as she continues to get older, some of the challenges and things you would like to see to evolve?
Sure, because she was so close to after, she's always been mainstreamed, always been in situations, but in so many cases, she was the first and only. At her elementary school, at middle school, at her big high school here, with 1,500 kids in Bethesda, Maryland, she was the first person permanently in a wheelchair ever at the school. When she went away to summer camp, they literally paved a path for her so her wheelchair could get over. So in some ways that's exciting. On others, as a kid, you just want to be included. You don't want to always be the first, the only. There's a difference between access and inclusion. And I think that's where we're still working. That's where we've sort of struggled along, is that inclusion piece. And that's certainly, where Easterseals has focused our efforts, is on bringing people into the community.
Yeah, we're going to get more with you guys on what Easterseals does. Colonel Gadson, I want to ask you, after your injury, what was it like with the military? Did they comply with the ADA? Was it kind of a learning curve for them? Where did they stand when it came to taking care of you and as you progressed and healed from your injuries?
Thank you. So it was, I will tell you, I was wounded, and everyone assumed that after my injuries and the nature of my injuries, that I would retire medically and move on as a disabled person, receiving a disabilities check. And I honestly kind of looked inside of myself, and I felt like I could contribute. I would joke frequently and say, at this point in my Army career, the Army wasn't really paying me for how fast I could run. And so I really felt like I could contribute. And through a program that the Army, and I don't know what it's called in the other branches, but it's called Continuation on Active Duty, they understand that people that have been that have vested in the service could continue to serve. And so I kind of pushed back and under the Continuation on Active Duty program applied and made an argument that I could continue to serve. Now, the regulation would only allow me to go to 20, but I was very fortunate to not only get promoted and run a military base in my last assignment, but I was actually allowed to serve past 20 years. And so, and there've been blind victims, there've been, again, multiple amputee victims that, and paralysis victims that have continued to serve. So I think our military has certainly, across all services, recognized the value of those that are willing to contribute. It's not a give me by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a feel sorry for you. You've got to be able to contribute. And in terms of accessibility, I really don't think that there have been really many that have been in my way. A lot of times with historical buildings that often get a grandfather, those can be tricky situations, but I like to say you adapt and overcome. It's only a disability if you let it be. And so I was very fortunate to be able to be at a point in my development that I could continue to serve.
I think we're at a point, because it's been 30 years, and especially for folks like me that don't have this on a daily basis, right? There isn't somebody in my family that we have to worry to make sure there's a ramp to get up, or if the menu comes in Braille, or if you could hear it. So it seems to be things sometimes that we take for granted because we're not paying attention, you know, because we don't use them on a daily basis. There's something I was reading about when it comes to where we need to go. And Colonel Gadson, you mentioned the accessibility, and Larry, you did as well. But we're in a technological world now. Where are we when it comes to technology? Technology can be a great thing and can make things easier, but there seems to be things out there that still make things difficult for those that are disabled, whether it's you know, hearing or mobility. I mean, you have, let's see, you have virtual events now, right? So there's a lot of people that maybe were limited with their mobility that can now enjoy these things virtually. But there's still, I feel like maybe that creates more barriers. I want to get y'all's opinion on that. Colonel Gadson, I'll start with you since we were just chatting with you. Where do you think we are when it comes to technology? Is that a good thing for us? Is it creating more barriers?
I think from an overall perspective, I think that technology has actually made things a lot more accessible. I'll give you a couple examples. First of all, my prosthetics. They have microprocessors, and not that they actually walk, they actually have powered prosthetics. And so the options continue to grow with artificial limbs. And so, I mean, that to me is really a revolution in itself. While I was recovering, I was able to go to grad school. And of course, you know, you have to submit, you know, papers, and I had injuries to my right arm and hand. I wasn't a very good typer in the first place, but, you know, dragon speak it was called, but a voice to, you know, and so that's how I got through grad school. So it would have been a challenge to find someone to, you know, well, the type for me or whatever. So it just gives you more autonomy is what is done. Not that those things couldn't have been done in the past, but you have more autonomy, I believe.
Angela, what have you seen when it comes to the technology? I mean, I was just thinking too, like you have the Googles and Alexas that are out there, which make things easier for some people. But then I feel like the more it advances, sometimes there's these barriers that maybe people weren't ready for.
One of the things that we've seen in Easterseals is that technology has been an incredible enhancement to the lives of people with disabilities, as Colonel Gadson just mentioned. So there are apps that people can use for varying that have various uses. And I would refer everybody to Bridging Apps, which is hosted by our Houston affiliate. And what they do is actually screen all apps to see their usability for people with disabilities. So it's called Bridging Apps. So if you're looking for great apps, that's a place to go. The other thing though, too, is that Easterseals across the country, a lot of them have assistive technology departments. So people can actually go in and sit down with someone at Easterseals to talk about their need, and Easterseals will actually do custom technology for folks depending on what their need is. And then there are also rental programs. Rather than spending a lot of money on a particular device, people can go to Easterseals, rent the technology, go home, try it out, see if it works, and take it back. So there are so many ways now to make sure that everyone is 100% included and 100% empowered.
Okay, I have to say, it's been 4 or 5 years I've done things with Easterseals. You guys always surprise me in everything that you do. I love it because every time I, you know, am with you all for whatever event, I learn something. There's so much that you all encompass when it comes to this community. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm just fascinated. I keep thinking there isn't anything else I can learn about Easterseals, but you always prove me wrong, that's for sure. And Larry, you mentioned, with your daughter, you mentioned the word inclusion, and we had somebody on the chat get really excited about that word. and about bringing that to the forefront. What is Easterseals doing to kind of help push that forward and make inclusion something that is at the forefront?
So it's really one of our core principles in all of our programs. You know, we're doing it in our early childhood. We're one of the only sets of early childhood programs that do true inclusion, that we have children as young as 2 with autism in the class with other people with extra supports. Our adult programs also, we're in the community. You know, we're not segregating people away. We're not pulling people out of classrooms to do therapy. All of that stuff is done within the basis of the community. In our military programs, when like our Little Warriors program, who serves childcare for folks recuperating at Walter Reed, what we found is not only is the child now included in the community, but the parents are as well. They're off base by being part of the Easterseals family when they may have been flown in from all around the country to be with their spouse. So all they know are people on the base, and we give them that extra community. To go back to the technology a bit, and as a parent, I don't say my daughter is wheelchair bound, because it's a wheelchair that gives her the freedom to be in the world.
Love that.
And and the wheelchair costs more than a number of houses I've lived in. I mean, these are very expensive things. And another area with my daughter particularly is social media, which we all make so much fun of millennials on social media. But for my daughter, it is a way for her to access the world. And I only fully appreciated it once when we got off a plane in Baltimore together and her wheelchair came off and wouldn't power up. And I was freaking out, right? Because we're stuck. We can't move a 400-pound wheelchair, right? And so she immediately got on her Facebook group for people with cerebral palsy, and they solved the problem. And, it was a switch somewhere. And so I really appreciated that, while she may not have met some of these people, they really are friends. And so I think that's, really, really important. That technology is particularly important. And then I guess the last thing I'd say on that topic is, the advances that have been made for people with disabilities end up serving the whole community. I mean, think about, strollers and curb cuts, right? Ramps to get into building, all those things that were designed for people with disabilities, but they help everybody. And on our commission for people with disabilities, we often get government folks coming in at the end of a process and then getting beat up because they didn't come to us early. They did something without thinking about the impact. And then they say, oh boy, that would be good for everybody. So we always encourage, think about this audience first, and you won't have problems for anybody else.
That's amazing. And just between, hearing from all 3 of you what technology has done and really how it has advanced your life. But Larry, that point of what is being done for the disabled community benefiting all of us. And I think a lot of us need to remember that of, innovation sparks innovation, and things we do help the disabled community, the things that the disabled community does helps the able-bodied community. But what a way to really take that into perspective and really appreciate the technology that we do have in front of us. So many advances have been made in the last 30 years, but this conversation is also about where do we need to go next? What do we need to be paying attention to as a community? What can we push for? What can we put our energy behind? Colonel Gadson, I want to start with you. Was there ever a time since your injury that you felt like the ADA didn't work for you?
Well, Kristen, again, thanks for that question. I can't think of a particular instance where perhaps maybe a restaurant or something like that,
Right.
where, you know, they thought that they didn't have a requirement to modify a building. And, you know, I pointed out that, yes, you don't have to modify your building, but you still have to be able to provide access because it's a public facility. And so, you know, you can educate, and, you know, and then I've had like the manager or something call me back and they thank me for making them aware. I think the biggest challenge in the community, and I want to just dovetail off of what Larry said, is about inclusion. And so we've gone a long way to create diversity. In other words, we have people with disabilities, we have people with color, but I don't know that we truly integrated everyone. And so integration is the next step. And the biggest stat I would say in the disability community that would that really has remained unchanged since the law was passed 30 years ago is really the employment rate of those with disabilities. That continues. I think that's the #1 challenge. I might be off a little bit, but and that really, to me, underscores the piece about inclusion. I mean, employers and people know that they have to provide access. They know that they have to hire or it's to their benefit to have people with that have diversity on their staffs and in their organizations. That's step one. But the inclusion piece, to me, is where we fall short, and that's really the embracing that happens. And I can tell you, I ride my bike. I ride a hand cycle. And I get so many thumbs up or attaboys and all that kind of thing from strangers that see me, and it's encouraging, but at the same time I often wonder what's going through their mind, and they're happy to see somebody out there with disabilities. When is someone with disabilities going to be normal? And that to me is what I think about. And so we have, as a country, as a nation, as employers, as governments, we've got a long way to go on the inclusion piece. Sorry for being a little long-winded there.
Oh, you're fine. I mean, some incredible points there. And Angela, you were nodding your head when we was talking about the employment situation when it comes to those with a disability. What's it like out there, and what do you guys do to help with that?
So one thing, if you don't mind, I just want to say that at Easterseals, we say our purpose is to change the way the world defines and views people with disabilities. And that gets right to what Colonel Gadson was speaking about. And then I totally agree. And I was nodding my head when he talked about employment. And specifically, Easterseals does workforce development in a number of different ways. For example, and Larry can speak to this about what his affiliate is doing, which is incredible in terms of working with veterans and their families and getting them reintegrated back into civilian life. But we also have workforce development programs that help youth or youth transitioning into adulthood to get employment. So employment is a big deal. But secondly, we talk about inclusion. I also want to throw in this third word, equity, because equity is really what gets at the heart of, if you have a seat at the table, your voice is heard, and what you have to say is counted as important is one piece of it. Secondly, if you have a means of earning income and being independent, that's social equity. What we're finding is that a lot of people with disabilities do not have jobs because employers are afraid to hire them. They don't know what the costs are in terms of accommodation, and they're afraid of that. And then the third thing I would talk about is healthcare and access to healthcare. That's another very important piece that we need to, when you ask the question about what's next with the ADA, there's still work to be done. Access to healthcare, employment opportunities, changing the way the world defines and views disabilities. As Colonel Gadson said, when he's riding his bicycle, and sir, you're probably logging in a lot more miles than I am. So I just, to my husband's chagrin, but I now you have inspired me. But I just think that there's just so much more that we need to do. Our Southern California affiliate, for example, has the Easterseals Disability Film Challenge. And again, if you see yourself on the screen, then that normalizes certain populations, and
Right.
disability being one of them.
There's the big thing I was going to ask about. So you brought it up, the PSA that just came out with Octavia Spencer, and she's urging Hollywood to hire more disabled actors instead of having able-bodied actors play those roles. And she said a lot of, why she became an actor was seeing women of color on television and seeing people like her. Yeah. And so continuing to, showcase everybody of all abilities, just continues to inspire others. And to your point, you see them on your big screen and see that they're able to do just what everybody else is. Why can't I do that? Why can't your daughter do that? Well, it just kind of, as you say, kind of normalizes it, right? And kind of creates that feeling and that space. I just saw that this week. It just came out. It's really, really powerful. Is this something? You mentioned the healthcare, which of course, with what's going on right now, how is the ADA protecting those with disabilities during this pandemic? Have you seen or heard how it's affecting those with a disability and those in that community?
Go
ahead, Larry.
Go ahead, Angela. Go ahead.
No, I'll just log in 2 points and then toss it to you. But one thing I would say is that just as in nursing homes, there are group home situations in which Easterseals is very much a part of operating and wanting to make sure that our participants are safe and protected. And there has been a need for personal protective equipment. So early on in COVID, there was a lot of emphasis placed on hospitals and acute care facilities, but you have folks like Easterseals that are community-based organizations that have need as well. And so I would just want to say that community-based organizations like us should not be forgotten, because we are right there in the trenches. And then the second thing I do want to flag, which is a concern, is that hospitals are not triaging patients in a way that discriminates against people with disabilities. And that's of serious concern to us. So with that, I'll stop and toss it to Larry.
Well, that was part of what I was going to say, that who's going to get treated, and people with disabilities are still in this day and age being treated as less. If you're going to have to say who gets the ventilator, the person with the disability is not at the front of the line. And I think, you would think would maybe be the opposite, right? A more vulnerable. That's only if every human being's life has equal value.
Right.
And, and when we're, with the country being so now talking about racial equity, when you add disability to it, any equity thing you're looking at, you take an African-American with a disability, their outcomes are, the worst. So it's, if you add with a disability, we still have a way to go. I mean, before the call, I looked it up. As of this month, 28.4% of people with disabilities have jobs.
Wow.
Working age adults, 28.4%.
28.4%.
And there is systemic reasons around that go to healthcare as well. Again, since my role here is as the parent, we look at my daughter. My daughter has AIDS, and thank God through all of this, the aides have been able to come to her apartment, which means I haven't been able to go to her apartment because I'm not in her bubble, but they have come, but they get her out of bed. What pays for that? Medicaid. She's on Medicaid, as almost all services for people with developmental disabilities are. Well, she can't have more than $2,000 of assets. If she does, she loses her Medicaid. So if she gets, that good job that pays her too much, she would lose her Medicaid, and she couldn't go to the job because she can't get out of bed by herself. So we need to, that's one of these next steps. We need to de-link, and and I don't know the history of it, but I suspect that was what was available back when this was talked about. So it just, and no one thought about jobs at that point. And Medicaid was a program for the poor. So now it's for the poor and the disabled, and that linkage has to go. That's, you know, like the next thing, because, you know, she needs healthcare, but she also wants and needs a good job. And right now there's a big conflict between those two. So that's still something we have to work at. And I think, you know, other things, you know, like colleges, when she was looking at colleges, the ADAs had a perverse effect on colleges, I think, in that they do what they need to do to avoid lawsuits, as opposed to saying, how do we create the best of all, you know, all possible circumstances for everybody. And for my daughter in a wheelchair, we found there were 4 colleges in the United States that had programs designed around students in wheelchairs. And she went to one of those, but 4, you know, and, you know, so it's really hard. You know, it's, it continues, we've come a long way, but there's a long way to go still. And I think it's about now that equity and inclusion. I think that's right. You know, access is one thing, but that doesn't mean it's equitable. Just, you know, you're allowed to come, but if you're not really able to, it doesn't matter.
Well, and I feel like again, the state of our world, of our nation, this is the messages that need to be heard. And that is what people are fighting for in many different aspects of life, equity, inclusion, and continuing to do that fight. I want to encourage our viewers out there. You guys have been great in our chat, and just want to keep it up. If something has sparked an interest in you and you can have some questions for our panelists, please start to send those through, and we will start to try and get those answered for you for sure. We want to make sure that we have time to answer everybody's questions. So if you can get those questions going, we'll start with that. Colonel Gadson, you speak about your experience. You're a motivational speaker. You get people inspired, and I want you to speak to our viewers, if you can, about kind of the takeaways you had and when your life changed, and how you came from a woe is me moment, if you ever had that, to this strong, inspiring man that you are now.
Well, thank you again. So I grew up as an athlete, wanted to be a professional football, ended up being a career Army officer. So, you know, that's how life follows your plan. But I think along the way, you know, first of all, I owe so much to my parents. You know, they grew up in the Jim Crow South, and you know, shared many lessons of perseverance and just having to overcome the obstacles in front of you. And you know, again, obviously as an athlete all the way through college, you get knocked down and you get back up. You know, serving successfully in the military. I was 41 years old when I got wounded. Never had to have help doing anything physically in my life, and all of a sudden, you know, I literally have to have help doing everything. And so I did hit that moment. I did hit that period where I just didn't want to participate in life. And you know, I say I tried to quit. I just wanted to just, you know, lay in bed and not do anything, not participate. And I said, I found out that wasn't me. And so I think for me, the thing that I have come to consistently say about this journey is really how we live our lives. I mean, Larry's talked about his daughter from the very beginning, is how you live your life. And that's really what defines you. And so I'm grateful that I had a life that taught me to, I say, stay in the moment, be present, and always do my best. And so in my lowest moment, in my moment when I wanted to give up, that wasn't me. I mean, I just couldn't naturally do that because that was going against my character. And so I was able to just, okay, well, if I can't do this right, then let's just bore ahead and see what happens. And so you know, I get a lot of credit, I think, sometimes for being this or that. And it's really just me just trying to be the best I can be. And you know, I'm honored and humbled to have an impact on many around me, but it's just kind of living up to trying to be the best I can. That's all that we as individuals could ever do. And so, Kristen, I would just real quickly, we were talking on the last subject, you know, I think as we move forward, we have to continue the partnerships. I mean, I'm very proud that veterans have had a huge impact on disabilities. Larry mentioned colleges. Well, the first college that addressed disabilities was the University of Illinois, if I'm correct, after World War I. You know, it was Vietnam veterans that were very instrumental in passing the Disabilities Act in 1991. And so our veterans play a key role, maybe because it puts a face that we don't necessarily think about all the time. And so I think that's a key partnership that we have to leverage and keep strong as we try to make progress. You're on mute. I think you're on mute.
I am. I was trying to be polite, be on mute, and that's what happens. Okay. As I was saying, sorry about that, everybody. Continuing on your story, Colonel Gadson, while we're on the topic, thank you for sharing, you know, your journey through this. Philip has asked, what keeps you motivated and positive during the times when you are down? By the way, our country is much better as a result of your service, which I think we all agree with Philip on that one. But what keeps you motivated?
Well, I think for me, it's part of understanding what I can control and what I can't control. And many of us know that we control very little in our lives. And so I like to say I try to be stingy with my energy and focus it on the things that I can control. And so, you know, just stay positive. You have to, I think it's something that you practice and you, and it's not something that always comes natural. I mean, I can be down or look down at something, and then, you know, but I'm aware of it, and then I can kind of push back. So, you know, so much of our emotions are truly being aware of it, and not letting them take charge of us instead of us taking charge of them. And so I've been fortunate to kind of learn how to manage that through sport, through military service, and just through the hard lessons in life. And you know, they serve me pretty well. And
you know, it's okay. We all have this wide array of emotions. It's okay to have good days and bad days. We know they're coming, right? We can't keep them away. Larry, as a caregiver, how do you continue to stay motivated and uplifted and there for your daughter?
Yeah, I think, you know, part of it is, I would call it a strengths-based approach. Yeah, when she was very young, and I remember this was sort of the key moment for me when she was about, I don't know, 3-4 months old, and we were getting a developmental screening, and the doctor said, you know, this disability is always going to be there. You know, you're going to deal with it, but look at what she's doing well. She's smiling, or she's making eye contact, you know, and we're going to maximize what she can do. So it's really looking at the abilities and getting the joy out of that. You know, it's exhausting being a parent of a child. It's lonely, it's scary, you don't know what you don't know, but, you know, get the joy out of what you can do. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, and I don't have the quote, but what did she learn from Franklin's polio? She said she learned patience. And I think that's the big thing, you know, is the things that don't matter really don't matter. You know, to focus, as Colonel Gadson said, focus on the things that matter in life, and appreciate, you know, we're very lucky. My daughter has done great. I feel very, very lucky to have her as my daughter. Does that mean there are times I don't want to, strangle her or, no, but it's, but all in all, it is really the only way you get through, I think, because it is overwhelming. Your life is never the same. And I think is to focus on those little incremental baby steps of positive motion. And if you do that, you can have a good life.
I love that. And Angela, as the lady in charge, you see people from all walks of life that are in different stages, different ages. What is just being in this role? How has that just impacted your life and the way you look at this community and pushing that passion for them?
Well, I look at it in two ways. One, in just this is my passion to really help people, which is what attracted me to Easterseals, and to see a population. And again, Larry has given some statistics, but 1 in 4 people live with disability. So we're talking about 25% of our population. That is a lot of people that are in need of services that Easterseals provide. I've also witnessed it from the family standpoint of having a grandchild that is autistic and has the autism disorder, but watching again how therapies like what Easterseals provides will take a child that's not making eye contact, that is not communicative, to one that is willing to sing karaoke and will make eye contact and now speaks, but in using movies, children's movies, and that language. And so if I don't watch a child's movie, I don't know quite where did that script come from. But, it's just really fascinating how Easterseals and the services we provide really just are heartwarming, impactful, and meaningful to not only our colleagues, we have 35,000 colleagues around the country, but also the people that we serve. And it's really, truly a super huge family.
I have to say, I was introduced to you all. I'd heard of Easterseals for years, right? But be honest, I really didn't know what Easterseals was all about and who you helped until I did a story with the chapter here so many years ago. And they're like my favorite stories to go. It's just an excuse really to go there because the people you meet are just so joyful and so happy. And it's and you all treat them so well and include them with able-bodied, especially the kids, with able-bodied kids, so that they don't feel left out. They don't feel different. And I think those of us that are able-bodied, if we can continue to think about that when we come across somebody with a disability. And it comes in all shapes and sizes, right? In all forms, all areas of severity. So thank you all for sharing all of that with us. I want to pop up a poll that we have for all of you that are viewers. If you could check that out, and we'll do the poll results here in a little bit. We got a question from one of our viewers, and it all goes with what we're going through now, and that is the coronavirus pandemic and wearing masks. So Michelle wants to know, how do we address wearing masks with individuals with disabilities as well as staff with disabilities? Who wants to take this one for us? It's always a touchy, an interesting subject, because a lot of us don't understand that some people can't wear them. And then some people don't understand why they have to wear them. Right? Angela, you want to take that?
I'll start, and then I'll just note that one of the folks that's been chatting in our box is Hawley, who works with me at the national office. And that's a question that I had asked of her. She's a person with a disability. And I said, so what do you think about masks? And she said, people ought to care enough for our lives that they would want to wear masks. And she said, those that can, people with disabilities, also wear masks. It's about mutual respect, protection, understanding that people that have vulnerable medical conditions need to be protected, and we have to do all that we can. And that's, again, going back to we're all in this together, and so we have to do what we need to do to protect each other.
And, I think, yes, there are going to be some people who truly have, sensory issues that they can't. However, just like parking permits, we're seeing phony FDA cards that people printed up, to say, I can't wear a mask. They're not real. Such cards do not exist. They're not real. And, it's sort of it's like using the parking spot. You're not in it together then. You're thinking about yourself and not other people. It's a hard issue. I know the deaf community, has come up with clear masks, so people who have to see your mouth to lip read can function. So again, we have to always remember the disability community is not a single group. Right. That it's a highly diverse group with many different types of needs. And so we have to think about hearing and speech and mobility and all of those things.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. My cousin suffers from hearing loss, and she's gotten by for so long before we even realized it by reading lips. And, I was thinking about her the other day because I was in somewhere with a mask, the person had a mask, and I could barely hear them. Just because we do get used to kind of watching when people talk. And then, so I was just kind of thinking about her and just, the adjustments, yet again, adjustments that have to be made to feel comfortable and to be able to communicate out there. But I think it's not, it was a good reminder, Larry, that the disability community isn't something that's always physically seen. There's other things and a whole wide range and a very diverse group of people when it comes to the disability, those that are with a disability. Colonel Gadson, somebody asked also, how you talked about inclusivity. How do we keep up with inclusivity in this virtual world that we have?
Well, I think it's quite a challenge. A lot of people talk about in the office space. There's no more, water cooler talk and all the kinds of the sidebars that we tend to only do business in this forum, and it's almost strictly business. So as this continues, and this may be the norm for longer than we expect or hope for. Again, we have to use these opportunities to connect this way. But I think we have to get together socially, and there's nothing, I guess, in our area here. I mean, other areas may be challenged, and so you want to certainly adhere to the local ordinance in terms of gatherings, but you just do it, and you do it safely. The masks are certainly a challenge, but it's just like you think of it as putting on your seatbelt. I mean, 30 years ago we were fighting to put our seatbelts on, but now we don't even think about it. And this is it's about respect. It's not about personal choice, because it's not about you your threat. It's about your threat to other people. And I will echo the challenges is that the deaf community may face the biggest challenges with respect to masks. I sit on a travel advisory board for disability travel advisory board for United Airlines, and we have some hearing impaired folks, and their biggest complaint is being able to read the flight attendants' lips because of light or how they're oriented, and the fact that they're going to have masks means they're in virtual silence. Not only with the flight attendant, but the people next to them. So so we've got to think through some of the challenges that the COVID environment's going to thing. You know, restaurants ironically are opened up because of their spacing. So someone in a wheelchair like me, we got more space to roll around. So it's not all bad. So it's a work in progress.
See, there's that silver lining you were talking about. Go ahead, Larry.
Use that it's, you know, I can't hire you because, you know, you can't be physically in the office all the time. Yeah, COVID blew that one out of the water too.
Yeah, that's
there's
right.
going to be a lot of changes when it comes to this, just in terms of the excuses that are going to go out the window, and then the changes that have to be made to make life easier and more accessible. Philip asked is on this topic, and Angela and Larry, you guys can jump in on this. What do we as individuals, what do we as businesses, or just a community that cares, how can we address these challenges that we're starting to see come to light every day? What suggestions do you guys have for us as a community in terms of how we can address these and bring these to the forefront?
I'll take the 30,000 foot level and Larry can take the grassroots level. So the 30,000 foot level would be two things. One, I want to just talk about the census. And October is the deadline for completing the 2020 census, and it's extremely important that everyone is counted, and particularly people with disabilities, because the federal funding flows down to the state and local governments, and unless folks are counted, then the money doesn't come. So that's one thing I would say. The second thing is the vote in November. And we all, as advocates, individually and collectively, need to cast our votes and make sure that our votes are counted on not only a national level, but on a state and local level, to ensure that people are in office that care about disability rights. So I'll stop there.
And I think, you know, coming way down, it's, you know, if, you know, it's that old, if you walk a mile in someone's shoes or roll a mile in someone's chair, you know, people with disabilities don't want to be treated differently. They don't want to be patted on the head. My daughter and others call it inspiration porn. Oh, you're such an inspiration. She doesn't want to be an inspiration. She just wants to be a member of the community, right? She just wants to, she doesn't want to get special. She doesn't want to be called out for, like Colonel Gadson, riding a bike. He's riding a bike. I can ride a bike, you know? We're all riding a bike. It's, you know, we don't need that. You know, we need just people to be seen and, you know, hire people. You know, we find people with disabilities stay on jobs longer. They care about their job more. With great supports, they're fantastic employees. So take the chance, you know, and if it doesn't work the first time, figure out why and do it again. It's the best thing you can do. It really is. You know, the more people are in the community, the less weird it will be. And that's what the community, I believe, is going for, to make it not weird to have a person with a disability around you.
Well, and I think too, you know, knowing what organizations like Easterseals does, and knowing that there are people out there that are fighting for you and here to help you. Darnell sent a question, and ever since I first really learned about what Easterseals does, I just thought, like, how can we get more people to know? So how did Easterseals as an organization get more of the national community to know about these wonderful programs, to know about the inclusion schooling that you have, to know about the job help that you have? The technology, Angela, that you mentioned is truly fascinating. So what do you think, what would you say to those of us in the community and within the organization to help lift this so more people know?
I would say, talking about Easterseals, referring people to Easterseals.com, People can then type in a zip code and identify their local affiliate and the services that are provided by that affiliate. I will say that our 68 affiliates across the country offer a variety of services, and not all of them are the same as you go from one city or one state to another. However, there are a number of online tools, toolkits, trainings that are available. Something that's extremely important is for new parents to know that there is an online assessment tool called Make the First Five Count, which allows parents to answer a series of questions to help them determine whether or not there are developmental delays with their child. Also remember that Easterseals serves the lifespan, from early childhood intervention all the way to senior services and everything in between. And then I would say that the top 3 categories or buckets of how we serve include not only early childhood intervention, but senior services and workforce development. So again, word of mouth, and I found to be one of the best ways to communicate. Obviously, we try to run PSAs so that the general public knows about us, but always just word of mouth. Now that people who are listening in today know even more about us, to continue to just shout out Easterseals everywhere they can, and social media is a gift.
I love that. Yes, social media is huge. And I think sharing the stories and you all being here to share your stories with all of us. We want to look at the poll real quick before we start to wrap things up, and then I'll get the final words that you want to leave all of us with. Do you know what the ADA is, was the first question we asked. 97% of you said yes, 3% of you said no. So that is fabulous. And knowing that we're in this 30th anniversary year, maybe continuing that education of the things that maybe we need to push for and that the ADA needs to evolve to, but knowing what that is, a huge first step. On a scale of 1 to 5, how ADA compliant are the businesses that you frequent? So wheelchair ramps, braille writing, clear masks, as we were talking about, handicapped bathrooms. We're kind of in the middle there. We got a 3. Are you guys surprised with that we're kind of 4 or 5, you know, so we're right in the middle. Does that surprise any of you?
No.
That's something, that is a number that we need to improve.
Yes.
We need to work on that. And then please check all of the services that Easterseals DCMDVA provides to make profound positive differences in the daily lives of people with all ages of disabilities, special needs, military backgrounds, and their families. It was multiple choice, and you know, the options: early care and education, medical adult day, respite care, behavioral health services for military families, reintegration for homeless veterans, career counseling and placement for military families, and occupational, physical, and cognitive. I've got something right in front of it, so I can't see the word. But the good thing is, those are all true. Those are all everything that Easterseals does. So way to go. You guys are way up there in terms of everything, but just an amazing list of the resources and the programs that Easterseals provides. Thank you to everybody for participating in that poll. And before we let you go, I do want to say, Angela, you mentioned making the first 5 count. Well, that is what the next webinar is going to be about, that Easterseals is putting on. So be on the lookout for that on the website and on Facebook, making the first 5 count. Before we let everybody go, Angela, I will start with you in terms of what you want people to take from this and those final words you want to leave them with as we go forth back into our community and become advocates for those that with disabilities in hopes of improving the ADA.
Thank you. I would say, again, not only is it about inclusion and diversity, but remember equity as well, and what equity means for people with disabilities. The second thing I would say is what we just finished discussing, and that is everyone, each of us, has the ability to be a champion and an advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. So every time we get a chance to do so, let's make a difference.
I love it. Larry, I'm coming over to you. What you going to leave us with?
Well, again, I think it really is about how can we, make things, again, equitable and inclusive. If we can do that, then we'll have made a difference in the lives of a lot of people.
And real quick, before I get to Colonel Gadson, Larry, I want to touch on something you talked about with your daughter, and Colonel Gadson, you can probably touch on this too. How do you want people to see your daughter? How do you want people to see people that have with disabilities? How do we, what's the thought that should be in our head when we meet somebody?
It should be, how would you meet someone without a disability? Don't start by feeling sorry for them. Don't ask, what's wrong with them. Just, think about what you would say. Say, hello, how are you? Not
What a concept.
And not necessarily, can I help you, right? She'll let you know if she needs help. She just wants to be like everybody else.
Right.
To the extent that she can.
Right.
And you should like her for the things she's good at, and the things when she's a pain in the ass, you should call her on that and tell her that as well. So.
And love her for that smile that you talked about. Colonel Gadson, same with you. How you talked about riding the bike and people doing a thumbs up, and I'm sure, and as military too, you get the thank you for your service all the time. Is that okay? Is that, what do you want? How do you want people to see you?
Well, I want people to, as Larry I think said, just as a person. Sometimes I've gotten to a table early at a dinner party, and when it's over with and I leave, they're like, I didn't know you were this. And so again, that's about seeing me as a person, not as a disability. And so we as folks with disabilities, we have a responsibility to be the best that we can be and live up to it and ask for help when we need help. But to me, it's as simple as what my father taught me growing up. Treat everyone with dignity and respect. And so that's invisible to the race, ethnicity, disability, or whatever, is just that is our noble goal. That is our lofty goal, to get to where we don't see disability, like we don't see color, like we don't see gender. We're just seeing a person, and respectful of backgrounds and challenges that a person might have, but that doesn't have to limit anyone's potential.
Some great words from all of you. Thank you so very much for participating today, and encouraging folks to learn more about the ADA, learn what your rights are, and also that we have a voice. We have a voice to go into the community and make change. So we appreciate you for opening our eyes and inspiring us as well. So thank you to everybody else for tuning in today and having this great conversation. Remember, the next webinar from Easterseals is making the first 5 count that Angela alluded to. And check out Easterseals for all the incredible programs that they have to help the community. And I'm just going to see if we're doing any more Q&A after, but that's it for our panel, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm going to check and see if anybody else has any more questions, but those were some great questions.
Yep.
We are all set. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much.
You bet.
Thank you.
Stay cool out there.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.